Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Yountville Town Council meeting for Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. Welcome to everyone that is in attendance. Please, clerk, call the roll.
Thank you. Councilmember Dornbecker.
Here.
Councilmember Durham.
Here.
Councilmember Moeller.
Here.
Vice Mayor Dorman.
Here.
Mayor Dunbar.
Here. And I will invite one of our special guests, Lois Reicher, to please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Group effort. Next up, we will be adopting our agenda, but we do have some changes to that. Clerk?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We have received a request from Allison Steltzner, the applicant for our public hearing item tonight, Heron House, and they are withdrawing their application. And then the second item is a request from staff based on a subsequent need to add an item to the agenda declaring a local state of emergency for recent PG&E PSPS events and power outage. To approve this item being added to the agenda, we need council to take action on that, and it needs to be a 4/5 vote in order for it to be accepted.
So we need a motion and a second and 4/5 to add the emergency declaration to the consent calendar.
Correct.
Yes.
So moved. I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda with those additions and subtractions as noted by the clerk.
Sorry.
Okay. Second. Councilmember Dorbecker, please go ahead and cast your vote. That would be 5-0. That does pass, so we will add that to our consent calendar coming up in just a moment. And then we also do have some corrections to address when we get to that consent calendar.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, then we're going to move right ahead to the first of our two special presentations this evening. The first will be a proclamation recognizing one of our special guests tonight, Ms. Lois Reicher. Would you please join me at the podium?
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
I have a little speech I wrote.
Well, you don't get to give it yet. I get a speech first.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're going to send you home with more than you came with here. This is a proclamation honoring you, Lois Reicher. Whereas Lois Reicher and her husband Jack made Yountville their permanent home in 1989 after living in 16 different locations over the years.
That's right.
In words Lois might have written herself, the Reichers took to Yountville like, quote, beets to a good vinaigrette.
That's cute.
Whereas always, I didn't write it, somebody else much more creative wrote it. Whereas always active in the Yountville community, Lois volunteered at the Yountville Chamber of Commerce, the Napa Valley Museum, and Focus, was an early member of the Yountville chapter of the Red Hat Society, and she took the stage with Dolly's Dancers. Whereas Lois also was a member of Yountville's Friends of the Library for over 20 years, serving as its president for several years. She was instrumental in bringing what was informally referred to as the Bookie Joint to the library's former location adjacent to Town Hall. Whereas a charter member and the first secretary of the Yountville Bocce Club, Lois became a regular bell ringer during Wednesday night play.
Oh,
Occasional, regular,
yeah,
okay.
right.
Whereas Lois was honored as Yountville's Citizen of the Year 4 times, including one such honor shared with her husband Jack. Whereas in 1998, a friend recommended Lois become the writer of a newsy column for the Yountville Sun newspaper about local goings-on because she knows everybody.
I did.
Lois titled her column Out and About, which over the years became part of Yountville's local charm and history. In 2014, Lois hired her new Out and About assistant and reporter's best friend, Lolita. Whereas Lois and Lolita recently moved to Walnut Creek to be closer to family. She retired from the Sun and our Yountville scene, but her presence in our community will not be forgotten. Now therefore be it resolved, I, John F. Dunbar, as mayor and on behalf of the town council and entire Yountville community, we hereby express our gratitude and thanks to Lois Riker for making and uniquely capturing so many Yountville memories. Do you want a picture? We're going to pose for a picture and then you'll share some comments.
Oh, okay. Oh, good. Thank you, John. Okay, I guess
That's for you. And this is for you also.
Thank you, Mayor John and Carrie and everybody that's involved. I'm very honored to be here tonight. As the proclamation says, my husband and I moved here 30 years ago, and it was a different town then. Right before Thomas Keller's when we moved here. We had front row seats watching the town form and flourish and become the famous and fabulous place it is today. And I wouldn't be here today if it were not for Sharon Stensis and the Yountville Sun. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Sharon. A few words about my husband. He was a good guy, and he was with me most of the way. He played a big part in our Citizen of the Year award, and one year he was the Chamber's Volunteer of the Year, and he also served 2 terms as Library Commissioner. But way before that, a long time before that, in 1992, he rented Town Hall and had a town rally for the United States presidential candidate Ross Perot. It was a fun event. We also celebrated our 50th wedding anniversary here. I am always proud to say I am from Yountville. I miss everything about it. Right now where I am, I'm taking classes in fitness and balance, and don't be surprised, I still have my house here. I may make a comeback. And I might even play bocce again.
Right on.
Yay, thank you, everybody. This is my, thank you. These are my 2 daughters, and then my adopted daughter's up there taking pictures.
A chopped liver daughter.
Thank you.
Hey, get into the picture, you girls. Get up there.
Yeah, group family photo. You get in there too. Yeah. Gotta face- all right, I'll come to you. Lois, we're very excited that you could be here with your family and all the people that love you so much from Yountville, so thank you. We have another very special woman to recognize tonight, Dorothy Barbosa, and I know that Rich and Darcy are here on her behalf, so if you please join me up at the podium to recognize Dorothy, one of our longest-standing residents.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Sorry, Mom couldn't make it. Her back is a little bothersome. And at
Her
100
spirit
years
is with
old-
us.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely. Hopefully Channel 28 is on as well. This proclamation is honoring Dorothy Barbosa, Yountville Citizen Centenarian. Whereas Dorothy Jane Fuller Barbosa was born on October 18th, 1919. Whereas Dorothy entered the University of Washington at age 16 and graduated cum laude with a Bachelor of Science in Home Economics, a real underachiever.
Yes, you are.
Clearly. Whereas Dorothy met her husband, Benito Barbosa, in 1955 at a Napa County Farm Bureau dance. After they married, they built a home on 20 acres of land just south of Yountville, where Ben worked for the town's water supply and treatment plant. Whereas after the births of their 2 children, Richard and Drea, Dorothy left full-time work to care for them and to work in the family vineyard, where she says, quote, "I personally planted some patches, I drove the tractor during harvest, and I bossed the crew too."
Oh, yeah.
Dorothy and Ben's grapes are farmed by Joseph Phelps Winery for their flagship Cabernet Sauvignon Insignia. Whereas Dorothy has a long history of volunteering in Yountville and the Napa Valley, including for Friends of the Library, the Napa Valley Wine Auction, the Napa Valley Grape Growers, and various youth groups. Whereas Dorothy also was elected to serve 4 terms on the Napa County Board of Education and served on the Napa County Grand Jury. Whereas now marking 100 wonderful years in our community, Dorothy still lives in the home she and Ben built together. Now therefore be it resolved, I, John F. Dunbar, Mayor, on behalf of the Town Council, staff, and residents, hereby express our gratitude to Dorothy Barbosa for her dedication and contribution to our community and declare her a Yountville Citizen Centenarian. Thank you. Congratulations. And thank you for sharing her with us. Please, if you'd like to share any comments.
Thank you very much.
I'll keep it short. Unfortunately, Mom couldn't be here. She hurt her back a few days ago, and she's not getting around so well. Not surprising at 100. She just asked me to convey her thanks, and she's sorry she couldn't be here.
And
Thank
take
you.
lots of walks and drink red wine. You'll get to 100 as well.
I like that. That is some of the best advice I've heard in a long time. Even the walks part. Okay. I just wanted to say on behalf of the council, this is what really makes it special for us to be, part of this community, is to be able to recognize some of our amazing residents. And so we have 2 really special people tonight that we were able to recognize. So thank you. And there are many others in this audience that one of these days you might be up here receiving that same proclamation, because you see so many people in here that have given so much of their personal lives to this community. So thank you. Thank you, Lois.
Thank you. May we be excused from
You do not have to stay. As was stated earlier, you've put in your time. Yeah.
try Perry Lang's tonight.
Okay.
And I would like to write a review, but I don't.
I was wondering where the notepad was. Thank you very much. You need to stop teasing us about going to Perry Lang's and drinking red wine. We get to sit here for a couple more hours.
We'll think of you.
Thank you.
We're just emptying the room, aren't we?
I know.
Right.
Because my dad is Robert Myers, who was a town manager many years ago. So the budget day was a weekend event at our house, like many weekends.
You got to enjoy it. Thank you. We do still have some public in here, so that's a good sign. We are going to move ahead to our next item, which is public comment on any items that are not on tonight's agenda. I know that we do have one from Samantha, our staff, if you would please share.
Thank you. So just briefly, I wanted to introduce Danielle Zoller. She's new to our Parks and Recreation team as our facility and events specialist. So Danielle, interesting story, actually was born and raised here in Yountville and then in North Napa, and she worked at our community pool back in the day, but most recently comes back to us by way of the Greater Stockton Chamber of Commerce. So we're very excited to have Danielle join our team in Parks and Rec, and I just wanted to bring her to introduce her to the council and to the community. So thanks for joining us. Say anything?
Yeah, just thank you. I'm excited to be here and really excited to kind of grow and evolve in this town and with this position in the Parks and Rec Department.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak during public comment? Actually, let's go ahead. Debbie, your hand was raised first, and then Jim, you'll be up next.
It's competitive now.
Oh, yes.
So, hi, Debbie Alterstar. I brought some flyers for you and a book. I'm the organizer of an event at Lincoln Theater on the 21st of November, and I'm hoping that somebody from the council can attend the afternoon workshop portion. And there's also an evening program. So this will be in the newspaper. It's the point of the program. It's a presentation, or workshop rather, by the Center for Mind Body Medicine. Dr. James S. Gordon is the founder and the executive director of that organization. And this is the organization that's in 5 counties in Northern California as the trauma relief training organization. So I had the opportunity to train with them as a guest at the Sonoma County Resilience Collaborative this summer in hopes that Napa would join them in this work. They're training over 300 people over a period of 3 trainings. I was the second training, because the goal is to be able to train people like you, people like everyone here, as well as providers, to lead mind-body skill groups that help people do their self-care after trauma or extreme stress. It's really for anything. In Sonoma County, the leads on this adoption were all the health organizations. Think about all the different OLE health systems they have there, because they're so much bigger than we are. They all realized they would not have the capacity to, even notwithstanding the fires, meet the needs for counseling or support that people have. They had huge wait lists, and they had people not graduating from the counseling services, so they needed to try some other things new. And when there's an emergency, it kind of resets the whole set of expectations of what the need is. So I think it's really prudent, given what we've been through with these PSPSs and just the recent small earthquake from Pleasant Hill that kind of reminded us again, we're earthquake country, to check this program out, to understand what it is. So Center for Mind Body Medicine will have a workshop from 12 to noon on November 21st. That's a Thursday. And there'll be a small group gathering afterwards of some leaders with Dr. Gordon. So I'm hoping that somebody from the council might be able to be a part of that. And then the evening program, we may have a special VIP interviewing him. We're still waiting to hear. So I'm going to leave the flyers, but I'm going to leave also the group. I realize I might be talking a little over. This book explains just how simple this model is, and it's research-based. They're 28 years old. They've been in so many countries around the world. It's like the other Doctors Without Borders. This one's not fixing bones and treating Ebola. This one is for trauma. And they come in after all kinds of natural disasters. So they were in Puerto Rico for Hurricane Maria. They were in Katrina. They were in Houston after all those hurricanes. I'll bet you, and they're in Bahamas soon. They come in after mass shootings, and this is relevant to our community. They're, in Parkland. That's how I heard about them. They were there after Sandy Hook. Retroactively, a couple years later, they came into Las Vegas. They're working with them now. And so I think the point of this is relevant for us. This is at the Lincoln Theater for a reason. We still have some healing that needs to be done from the shooting on the Hill. I hear that from people who live and work on the Hill. There wasn't really a closure, not that there ever really is closure, but healing is always possible. And so I think this is really important. The final thing I want to say is I do feel for our neighbors on the Hill. I feel like it's a different kind of living situation than all of us here. It doesn't have the same rights and privileges, ironically, for people to ask for services. When we come here, and our community is very interactive and very accessible. It's just a little bit different up on the Hill because they have to deal with the state. I think we all know that. So I'm going to leave this book, and I can pick it up later. And these
you
flyers.
can go ahead and give that to Michelle.
Yeah, and I hope I'll follow up and just see if there's somebody who can make it and be part of the small group conversation afterwards.
Thank you. Mr. Shoup?
Good evening, Mayor Dunbar, council staff. My name is Jim Shoup. I'm a longtime resident of the Veterans Home and a member of the Napa County Veterans Commission. And for what it's worth, I'm also the Commodore of the Yountville Yacht Club. On October 2nd of this year, at the monthly meeting of the Veterans Home Allied Council, Mayor Dunbar reported that Governor Newsom had just announced a new executive order to go into effect on September 30th, 2019, that would identify state-owned real estate that is currently vacant, obsolete, or otherwise not being utilized for its best use by the state, and funded that order with a $1.75 billion line item in his current budget. The governor has targeted 2 properties in Napa County that possibly could be developed for low-cost housing developments under this program. There are the Skyline Wilderness Park and the Yountville Veterans Home. This program is a huge opportunity for the town of Yountville. Yountville is the poster child of being the home of many of the world's best and most prestigious restaurants and luxury hotels. And it's also a great example of an extremely limited parking and no local employee housing. With this presentation, Yountville Veterans Home has 225 acres of available land and empty, dilapidated buildings that can be leased out and professionally developed under the governor's proposal. With this presentation, I strongly urge the town of Yountville to join with the 3 other participating players in this project, the Federal Veterans Commission, the Federal Veterans Administration, CalVet in Sacramento, and the Napa County Veterans Commission in the resurrection and restoration of the crown jewel of veterans' homes. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Shoup.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Any other public comment tonight? Okay, we will move ahead to our consent calendar, and as was mentioned earlier, we do have some corrections here and
Yes,
changes.
Thank you, Mayor. We have an updated quarterly financial report that was distributed to council and the public. And then we corrected the spelling of 2 people's names on 2 sets of minutes. And those corrections have been provided to council and the public. And then third, with the action taken under adoption of the agenda, we've added item 7G, and the action would be adopt resolution number 19-3953, approving resolution proclaiming the existence of a local emergency and acknowledging a state proclamation of a state of emergency. And that will be part of the consent calendar action.
Right, so that can be included in all items 7A through G.
That's correct.
Okay, is there any question, or is there a motion to adopt the consent calendar as modified?
I move we adopt the consent calendar as modified.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we are waiting. There we go. Please vote. That does pass unanimously. Thank you very much. Yeah, we're 2 for 2 on the voting. Okay, now we have 2 presentations. The first one, Cynthia Capshan, regarding our Art Box Small Grant Award. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, this should be fun. So, Mayor Dunbar, Vice Mayor, council members, and staff, thank you for having me.
Cindy, if you could just bring that down a little bit so we can, there we go, perfect.
Great. Thanks for having me. So what I wanted to do is just to give you a little snapshot of the results of the Yountville Art Box project. This was, as you may know, it's one of the first, I was one of the first recipients for the grant, for the Small Projects Grant, and was very excited to get it, and collected a lot of data that really has no scientific meaning, but it's, you know, it's kind of fun anyhow, so that's what I'm going to go over. So after, so I started this project, oh, this is a little quicker thing. I started this project in May and concluded it when all my boxes were stolen in September. and more about that later. And so what I decided to do was collate the data, and put it on a spreadsheet. But instead of giving you this spreadsheet that has 400 and something pieces of data on it, I put in this presentation. So
Thank you.
Yeah, well, I thought you probably get a lot of white pieces.
This looks good.
White pieces of paper with black writing on them. So the box itself, just to review what the box in the project was. The idea was to put a box that looked very much like this in different places in town. It contains a couple of cards. There's a question card, and then which includes instructions about what to do with the box. And then the question is, what piece of art or literature has influenced you? And you answer the question on the other card, follow on Instagram, pass the box to somebody that you preferably don't know, or just leave it in a public space, and don't take the box. And yeah, people took the box. So, because it's a cute box, and it at one point had a very cute pen in it. But so the results were really interesting. I mean, and again, this is like just a snapshot. Obviously, it's nothing. Oops, sorry. How do I pause? Okay. So there were 445 responses. I think we put out over 100 boxes. And we had 100 plus Instagram followers. And what was kind of cool was that I got things back in the box that I did not expect. People left comments, blessings. I got a rock back, and somebody left me a dollar bill. With the dollar bill, I didn't know exactly what to do, so I put it back in the box, and I thought it'll be interesting to see how many times I get it back. And I never got it back. So, you know, what are you going to do? There were 19 different countries. So I asked people to respond with their initials and where they were from. So that's what this data is. 19 different countries walked through basically Vandeleur Park and Yountville public areas, including Armenia, my ancestral homeland, Austria, Brazil, Canada, from, all over the world. So that was pretty cool. In terms of the United States, this is where people were from. And again, people traveled from all over the United States just to participate in this project, which is
Clearly
what I believe is true, because this is like giving a deposition. Right? The local responses, I just highlighted the two Northern California counties because Southern California doesn't count. Yountville, 19 responses. St. Helena, Sonoma, San Francisco was big, Napa, and then Los Angeles, which obviously should not be pictured. So again, the question was, what piece of art or literature has most influenced you? People kind of took that as a very broad question. And so of the responses, 211 wrote a book down, 80 people wrote about painting that influenced them, sculpture, then music, architecture, nature, including Yosemite Park got a number of responses, poetry, and movies. The other votes, as I said, Yosemite received some votes. The TV show Veep Night Court, Instant Hotel Australia, which isn't actually that bad. And then the U.S. women's national soccer team, which is pictured there after they won. Yes, that was pretty exciting. And then somebody put their wife's ashes, and I have no, I don't know what that was about. And then somebody said that they were most influenced by Playboy magazine. More unique choices, personal love notes. That was kind of nice. Gandhi, and then Iris Apfel. She's the 80-plus-year-old woman with the glasses. That's like a fashion icon. Somebody put the State of the Union speech, which is why we have Nancy Pelosi sarcastically clapping. And then somebody from China actually put this woman's name down, who is a project manager, and that's what she does. And I don't know how she was connected to this Chinese woman, but there it is. And then Pokemon, which is an influential, a video game. The books, for a while, it was neck and neck between the Bible and Harry Potter. And then Harry Potter just zoomed ahead, as you can see, with 12 votes versus the Bible at 8. Shakespeare, Hemingway, and a lot of different Hemingway books. So this is obviously from Harry Potter. And then this, I think I have to click it again. Yep. So the question is just how much of an impact did the Yountville Art Box make? And this was on Instagram. It was unprecedented that no art box has ever had such a following, and it was obvious. It was hashtag best idea ever. So if you click on that, you can see whenever I posted. So I posted all of the responses on Instagram, as many of you know, since you're one of the 100+ followers. And on Instagram, so I posted an image of, and scroll down a little bit, of the piece that they were talking about, and then a little fact about it, and also where the person was from. So it was initials, JK from China said Eiffel Tower, and something about the Eiffel Tower. And so that's the website. It's Instagram.com. It's quite popular. Okay, let's go back. There we go. This is like a flashback. Okay, so then when the project concluded, within days of the Yountville Art Box project being completed, this happened. And the question of, did we go too far? Actually, Sam told me about this, and I was, quite taken back. You remember that the Holy Bible and Harry Potter were kind of neck and neck. And shortly after the results of the Art Box were in, Harry Potter was banned by the Catholic Church in Tennessee. And I thought that was going to go viral, but fortunately it did not. So we kind of, dodged a bullet there. The books, more books, including the To Kill a Mockingbird. I actually thought To Kill a Mockingbird would be #1 since it was PBS's #1. But there were lots of good choices there. And this is from The Giving Tree, which I read after that. I hadn't read that before. And then Diary of a Young Girl, which was Anne Frank's book. That was the choice of several Europeans. And Frankenstein, Mary Shelley. Going on to paintings and sculptures, Monet's Water Lilies by far was just super popular. Van Gogh, Picasso, and then you have Mona Lisa there and the girl with the pearl earring. Oh, I should go back because the Yountville Art Walk. Now, again, the question was, what's the most influential piece of art? And okay, our Yountville Art Walk is on there a number of times. It just with Raven and Polly, Music Stirs the Heart, Low Poly, Open Heart, which is the sculpture by Wells Fargo. And this is Jackson Pollock actually doing his painting. And then Rock Mushrooms, also Yountville Art Walk, and Vandeleur Park itself got 3 votes. So the conclusions, some people take things that don't belong to them, but most people don't. Some people don't read the question, but they answer it anyway. Monet and Harry Potter are very influential. And then finally, if somebody gives you $1, you should keep it. And that's it.
Well done.
I think you did get the spirit of what we were trying to do with that money. Not the dollar bill, the other money.
Oh, the real money. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Set the bar very high with your scientific social experiment.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Can I say one thing?
Yes. Do you want to return that box? Is that what you want to say? Or the dollar, right?
No, I just want to say, when we first started this for the ad hoc committee, the idea was to make Yountville smile. And we've gotten quite a few requests, and unfortunately we've turned down quite a few requests because they the intent was not to make anybody smile. And we have some interesting projects coming down, but this is exactly what should happen. And this is great because, to be honest, I was getting a little deterred because we just weren't getting these fun, smiling ideas, and this is exactly what happened. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, Samantha, you have to follow that.
I know.
So we have a presentation of the 360-degree tour and promotional videos for our town parks and community center. Samantha.
Thank you. So I am just going to walk you through a short tour, no pun intended, of some of the updates we made to our website recently for the parks and the community center. So back in June, or it was really May of 2019, last fiscal year, we started working with a company on a contract to improve some of our marketing materials for the website for those facilities that we rent. So the community center, community hall, and then our park reservation areas as well. And so we worked on some drone footage that equated to a 360-degree tour for those sites, as well as a video for each one. So I just wanted to give you and the public a little glimpse of what the outcome of that is. So this is directly on the town's website under the Parks and Recreation Department. We have a facilities page, Parks and Facilities. So we'll start with the community center and hall. So this is the promotional video that I would like to show you, and it has some really lovely drone footage. Down. So that's the promotional video that was the outcome of that. And from that, we also have a ton of still photography that we can use in lots of different ways. And then also the 360-degree tour of both facilities. So I won't show you every slide, but it's definitely very interactive. Again, I'm looking at this right on our website. Starting here at the front door, I can use my cursor to just basically walk through the building. So if I'm potentially looking at holding an event here, as we know, most people start their research for things online these days. So they're not necessarily looking us up in the yellow pages anymore and wanting to come in for a tour. They want to see what the facility is like before they even make those steps. And so this allows them to basically walk through the facility and see exactly, what it visually looks like in the space before they even kind of reach out and make those type of appointments. We have all of our rentable spaces on the tour. Here's the founder's boardroom, the lobby at the community, or the reception room, the hall, and then we go into the outdoor spaces as well. And so we have this for both community hall and then the main center, where we reserve basically the classroom, or we also have the outdoor event lawn. And then we also have on, going back one page to our parks and facilities again, our park and picnic sites. And we also have this 3D tour and video that was prepared for Yountville Community Park and Veterans Memorial Park. Again, very interactive. We do have, as you know, the 5 reservable areas in our parks. And so the tour allows people, because a lot of times people aren't quite sure what site 1, what site 2, what site 3. So it's very easy for them. So let's say I want to see a 360-degree view of site 3, and I'm able to do that. And then we also have the same abilities, site 4, and then moving into Veterans Park as well, from the plaza all the way down to the bocce courts. So it's very interactive for people. And again, out of this came a whole library of still photography as well. So so far we've seen a really great response from people to the updates on our website, as well as being able just to email links to potential clients from these resources as well. We feel like we got a really wonderful product for the investment that we made into this that was budgeted in our marketing budget. So we just wanted to bring that forward and share with you. And we're continuing to work on the website and build those online and digital resources for us to market better the facilities that we have to offer here. So happy to answer any questions.
Great.
And thank you for your time.
Questions? Councilmember
How
Durham?
long's this been up?
We received the final draft in September. So we've been working on the website renovations, but since September.
And then is Danielle part of this in terms of sales?
Danielle Zoller, our new employee?
Yeah.
Yeah, so she doesn't currently do the sales portion of it, but, you know, these are resources she could potentially use as well.
So, but she will be selling the space?
That still is Lisa Tyler's responsibility.
That's what
Yeah,
okay, very good.
that
Thank
makes
you.
sense. Yeah.
Councilmember Dornbecker?
I just was wondering if you thought of having any commentary when the drone footage was on. It's really beautiful to look at, but people may wonder, well, what is that and what is that room?
Yeah, so the current way that they built that, there's not really an option for that. There might be a possibility for us to request some additions of text in the video, but that's something I could look into.
Just a question.
Yeah.
But the video is beautiful.
Thank you.
Well done. It looks great.
Thank you very much.
Question about different devices. Can that can play on laptops,
It
mobile
absolutely
devices,
can.
everything?
So anything that could play something like a YouTube video can play this. And so generally speaking these days, that could be your smartphone.
That's great.
All the way up. So the town's website does have a digital or a phone, basically a phone page that you view when you look it up on your phone. And those are all items that you can see through that as well. So
Yeah.
in this day and age, you know, everything's getting smaller, and phones are really where can be, 90% of the time the first place someone starts to look at our services. So it's important that we're viewable on that.
Absolutely. And they both show beautifully. Really well done.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on now. We have already identified that we're postponing the public hearing on the use permit. Yes? Withdrawing. It has been withdrawn at the request of the applicant, as eloquently stated earlier. And so we're going to move on to our first administrative regular item, Washington Park Water Distribution System. Mr. Tagliabashi.
Thank you. Let me go with this one. Let me get the microphone set up and we're ready to go. Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Tonight we have for your consideration a resolution that will allow us to use some of the funds in this year to do some design work for the water system in Washington Park and the CIP and a CIP change in the upcoming fiscal year. So just to give you a few snapshots of what we've done, we conducted a pipe assessment of Washington Park after we had a few main breaks over the past few years. As you are all well aware, water distribution systems are designed to last for at least 50 years. We're at about half of that with the Washington Park subdivision. This happened on Landy Lane, March 2011. This was a main break at Mountain Jasmine earlier this year on a water valve right at the intersection. 4 shots here. Landy Lane again, Forester and Jasmine, and then a shot of the hole at Forester, and that's the pipe on the upper right-hand corner of the pipe at Forester, which is substantially worn, considering it's only 20 years old. This is the location of the main breaks that we've had. As I said, we conducted a study with M.E. Simpson, who provided an assessment of the system based on the main breaks we've had, but also just looking at the system as a whole to see if there were other inconsistencies in the Washington Park system, because we had a feeling that there might be some other main breaks. However, what they found was really in those 4 areas where we talked about earlier where we had main breaks, those pipes are substantially deteriorated, somewhere in between the lower 30s and the upper almost 50%, 43%. So what that's telling us is, although we're in the 20 or 25-year range of service for the pipe water main system in Washington Park, we're actually substantially above that in terms of wear, at least in those 4 areas. There's an additional 5 areas that also have shown some substantial wear and are a cause for concern. So they listed, out of the 16 segments that they looked at, they rated 4 as poor. That's about 1,100 feet of pipe in the 6 and 8 inch range. Estimated cost to repair that pipe are $550,000. We have another option that we're looking at for your consideration, and we'll bring this back when we bring back the CIP at the end of the year into the new year. What we'd like to try to do is put together the poor rated segment, which definitely should be replaced, and a second option would be to replace the additional 5 segments that are showing considerable wear as well. That would be an additional $875,000 for a total of $1.4 million to replace about half of the water main system in Washington Park. If you wanted to replace all of the surveyed system, that would be estimated at around $2.3 million. There were some questions about should we have done some more testing, or could we have done different testing? And our response is we could have. It probably wouldn't have given us any better data than we have right now, and it just would have cost more time and more money. And we think that the best idea that we had that came forth with this was that it validated what we knew already, was that we had some sections that were substantially deteriorated, a few sections that are deteriorating faster than would be in a similarly aged system, and it's our recommendation that we do some design work on these option A and option B, and then come back at the end of the fiscal year with a plan to do both of these systems with an option for B and the option A going forward. So we do a bid alternative for B, and with this recommendation that we do A, and then see what the bids come back at, and then have a discussion about what that means in terms of resources and time to do that work.
To augment a bit, one of the things that we're going to be looking at is a financing plan, because one of the things that Joe hasn't really gone into is what this is going to do to our water utility operating fund balance and the current schedule and planned maintenance and operations. And the short answer is it's going to blow it up because, as the Public Works Director noted, the life cycle of these pipes is only at about the half. So when we're basically going to have to be doing an evaluation and a restructuring of the CIP to implement these changes. And as you look at the segments, it's a fairly significant. So while we're looking at the engineering work, staff feels really strongly that it's probably the best, most prudent to do the A and the B. It also has the least long-term negative impact on the subdivision and the community, and it should give us a longer life cycle. So we're going to be looking at a few options with regard to debt financing, restructuring the payment stream, and or looking at possible consideration of borrowing against the drought reserve fund. So while Joe's working on the engineering side of it, I'll be working on the financing side of it. The other thing that I think hopefully everybody can understand is that we didn't have 1.425 million or more, because I'm still going to be cautious about how the construction bids are coming out in the current environment that we're seeing. That's not planned in the current 5-year rate cycle. Only a little over 500,000 is. So, and we also had things that were planned. So we're going to have to do a retooling. We'll be bringing that back. The good news is that we are able to move forward with the design of both A and B, because the incremental design and engineering work is nominal, and then fine-tune and come back. But it is coupled with the water fund also taking a significant hit this year from the Veterans Home Rector Reservoir situation and the purchase. So you'll be seeing a little bit more from Celia and I on the water fund balance structure. The good news is that we have the ability to finance, redistribute. Bad news, obviously, is that, as staff had indicated, the system is failing prematurely, and ignoring it is only going to result in considerable experiences. So staff's goal is to be proactive and come up with a game plan to repair, and then we'll have to reset the cycle for that. So some good news, bad news, and opportunity for us to look at some financing structures for you.
I didn't hear any good news in there. I'm not sure where you got the good news part, but weren't we involved in a lawsuit against the manufacturer of the pipe that is failing in half the time it's supposed to last?
No, that's not the issue here.
So it's not faulty product?
Not in this particular case. The lawsuit that you're referring to is not the pipe that was necessarily involved in this. So no, that's not the case. Really, without getting into it, I think there's a combination of things that we're learning, which is it could be probably construction, the nature of construction, the method of construction that the contractor that built the subdivision, and perhaps that the contractor used substandard ductile pipe in this particular development that's not lasting. Because what we're also seeing is fill that's eroding the nature of the pipe. So that's a completely different situation from the J.M. Eagle that you're referring to.
Okay, so a different target of a lawsuit. So is there any way to recover costs if it's actually bad engineering, bad installation?
I'm not licensed to practice law in the state of California.
But somebody next to you is.
It is, but I'm generally going to tell you that a subdivision that's been accepted and in place 20-some years, we have very little chances of suing the contractor and being successful.
Do you have a different answer for me, Ryan?
I would generally agree with Steve. I mean, it does depend on the subdivision agreement and the documents from that time. We can certainly review those closely, and Steve and I can work together along with Gary to see if there's any avenues in that way. But at this point, it kind of depends on the facts, really, and the facts being 25 years old makes it a little bit more challenging.
I think it's still worth looking into as we're considering these other $1.5 million repairs.
General warranty periods are about 2 years, so anything outside of that is very tough to get money back on in general.
Councilmember Mueller?
Can you go over one more time why you're eliminating option C? I guess it seems to me, unless you have some more information, that we redo the system outlined in option A and B. Isn't that, or could that put more stress on, we really have the same system in C, we're just not redoing it. I mean, does it make any sense with economy of scale at all to even consider that?
This is just based on what we see as wear and parts of the system that were in the marginal range. So the poor ones, of course, we need to replace those because they've definitely shown us that they're already vulnerable. Too many main breaks in those sections, so it would be our recommendation that we go ahead and remove and replace those. And the next 5 sections were just based on kind of being in the range where they haven't had any main breaks, but given the fact that money's relatively inexpensive right now and we could probably lock in a pretty good rate, our recommendation would be those next 5 sections would probably be prudent given where we're at and the disruption it's going to cause the neighborhood. And then the remaining 7 sections, while they are wearing, don't show the same type of degradation that the sections that we're recommending for replacement.
Okay, nothing at all then. So it seems like it's wearing at its lifetime rate. Okay.
Well, yes, right. Not nearly as quickly. The curve is just a little bit less steep on those other pipes than it is in the ones that we're recommending for replacement.
If it's consistent with the home building and the products that were used, what the neighbors, since this is a neighborhood that I live in, we're seeing inconsistent failures as well. Some homes, I know Billy's in the neighborhood as well. Some homes have lasted longer than others, and it seems like some of the products weren't really ready to be used or should never have been used in some of the properties, not all of them.
Yeah, we can't say that definitively. What we can say is that in areas where we have had main breaks, it also shows through our testing that they've degraded substantially. And in areas where it's in this near vicinity, those areas are also showing degradation. It's not a type of material that we would use anymore, Mayor, in building. We use a plastic pipe now. It's much more durable. It's exceeding the 50-year life cycle in some cases, and we would have a different type of backfill, so we wouldn't have that same kind of volcanic cinder backfill that we think they use in this case. And so removing the metal pipe, it's ductile iron, using a different type of backfill, and that more commonly used type of pipe, we think would restore the life cycle that we are more used to seeing with current construction methods.
Right. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Tagliabachi. Could you go back to the 3 options slide, please?
Happily.
Thank you. So option A is the 4 poor, and option B is 5 of the moderate, the 5 worst moderate.
That's correct.
Correct. Okay. And to do the 4 as the bid with the 5 as an alternate, we have money budgeted for this fiscal year that will cover that. What you need to bid it or get the plans?
No, we do not.
That's not it.
Okay.
We do not. So what we have is
I'm sorry. Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
I'm not using the right term.
So
we have money to cover the engineering.
We
in
do
this
have
year's
money to cover
budget.
the engineering and design. That's correct.
Okay, so we can get that out this year. And then if we only go with option A, we have money budgeted in our
5-year
WA
CIP.
3020 account, and if we use it for the next 3 years, we would be able to cover the 4 worst
We
segments.
would create deficit spending for the next 3 years to cover the next year's building. That's correct.
Well, not really. I mean, we have the money set aside. We would just have to earmark it for there.
No, because we're a pay-as-you-go. So if you recall our rate structure, it's underwater, and it's not going to be really close to being even until year 5, right? So we're about year 2 or 3 now. So we're a pay-as-you-go kind of. That's how this is built.
So
we
when
would
I
actually
look
be in
at
deficit
the
spending.
wait, let me ask my question. When I look at the CIP WA-3020 account every year, and I see 150 or 165 or whatever I see in there, we've set that aside, but you're saying we may or may not have that money to actually use for that purpose?
That's
So
correct.
what I'm saying is it's budgeted, but we don't actually have it at this point.
Right, we hope to get it.
That's
If
correct.
our projections are what we hope, we will have that money.
And that would be after the 5 years. The other thing that's going to have an impact is that, as we talked before about the water fund and the wastewater utility enterprise kind of being a checkbook, the other thing that has happened to the water fund balance is that we're anticipating somewhere between a 350 and a 400,000 hit from the water purchase. So when you put the two together, we are going to be within the 5-year rate cycle, not have sufficient funding. The other thing I also want to clarify is that the cost that we're talking about is for the water line repair itself, we are going to have to use Measure T and prioritize and move projects for paving. So we've got a little bit of work to do on our overall CIP in order to come back in and pave after the areas where we have put the new trenches. So this is going to be, for those of you that are familiar, to be very similar to the kind of work that we just did on Yount Street.
I think I need to correct just a little bit about the paving. So the trenches will be paved as a part of this project. However, it's not, that kind of process lends itself to a paving degrading quicker. So what we typically do, as you all are aware, is we do a trench line, a paving or a pipeline job, and then we pave almost directly after that. So what we would do and what we plan on doing is coming forward to you with the Measure T plan next council meeting, as it was already lined up, and we will reconfigure the plan to cover the Washington Park neighborhood in the next fiscal year so that we can do the trenching, pipeline, and then repave that neighborhood so that the trench is covered with new pavement. Not just the trench, but the neighborhood. The streets are repaved.
And that's why I'm saying this is going to require a little bit of restructuring in our CIP, moving some things around and mapping things out differently. So that's what we're going to be working on in the next couple of weeks, is to put that all together for you.
Thank you.
Hold on, Councilmember Dornbecker.
Yes. Joe, I remember other situations where we had to repair certain pipes and things, and you described to us how the technology has improved so much that there are these slip lines that you can put through. Would that not work in this situation?
We're going to look at a variety of techniques, and you are correct. There are some newer techniques. Slip lining is used more for gravity lines, so storm sewer lines. The challenge with a water distribution line is you have to reestablish the laterals that service the homes, and to do that, you generally need to put a new pipe in place. So there are some pipe bursting and some other things that allow you to use the existing pipe as a chase. And we're going to look at all those options to see, make sure we can get the biggest bang for the buck, because there are some newer techniques out there. And
So some of those things might offset some of these costs.
They might.
Oh, thank you.
And I think that's important, that we want to set a stage for you, is that the first thing is we're doing some very preliminary estimates based on what we know. And then that's why we're going to go in and retain engineering and design work, look at some options, get a better understanding, look at financing options. So we'll be talking about this more and giving you options, but this is really to set that up. You know, you'd asked us to go in and take a look, and the good news is that the whole system doesn't need to be replaced. That's the only, the silver lining is there is a segment that, based on our analysis, would appear that it's sufficient, but as you can see, a significant portion of the system really is at a degraded state that we would prefer to proactively come in with a significant repair, go in, fix it, and then have hopefully another 40 to 50 years before the system needs to be looked at. So that's the kind of comprehensive approach that staff is looking at. We do think we have some financing options so that we'll be able to use the funding structure that Vice Mayor Dorman was referring to, and it may need to be converted to debt service to pay over time. Because I do want to remind everybody, the rate cycle is based on a revenue, and to the Vice Mayor's comment, we had anticipated in building some fund balance, and that's why I use the term, you know, for the next couple of years, we were hoping to get money ahead so that we would be able to pay cash as we go. But order of magnitude is not working in our favor, I guess would be the best way to share with this. And it also means that we do have to move other things around that were planned in our collective public works CIP.
Councilmember Mueller.
In our current rate structure, we're year 2/3 of 5 years. We also have built into that that we can, there's a range in which we can increase those rates because we pay in arrears for the water. So we have that to also look at instead of waiting for the end of the 5-year cycle.
That's a possibility on water purchase cost. and that's one of the things that we're
But
trying
not
to get.
capital?
Not capital.
Okay.
It only applies to the actual, what many people may not be aware of is we are what is known as a water purchaser. So under state law, if we have if we projected a 5 to 6% rate increase on the water purchase costs, but it goes significantly higher than that, then that's where we have the opportunity to revisit the water rate for that segment. And that's a significant cost in Yountville because we buy treated water from the Veterans Home. And as many of you know, when you look at the graph every year in the budget, it's been going up in a double-digit format. And based on current year, we're trying to get a better understanding. So that's why I say best efforts going forward have had a couple situations that are going to affect the water fund balance. And the good news is we have capacity. We have the ability to have the system be repaired and be functional and serviceable for the residents in Washington Park, but it is going to cause, and it won't, the other thing I would say is it probably is not going to result in a decrease in rate structure because if we have to convert to debt service, that's going to carry that payment through for the next cycle.
Do we see any impacts on the outer edges of this system, neighboring? I'm assuming that because we had a specific developer do this particular neighborhood, but the connections to immediate neighborhoods is not in jeopardy.
We don't. We looked at this system, but we don't see any indications that the other parts of the system that it connects to are in any way in jeopardy. They're aging just as we thought they would.
Okay.
At least by the indications that we have.
Councilmember Dornbecker.
Well, speaking of this, it reminds me that we this evening received an alert that the Veterans Home had asked us to change to Napa Water. Does this play into, now that since we're talking about water, into the cost of water and into, where does that leave us? You're speechless? I've
No,
never
I'm not
seen that
speechless,
before.
but I think the issue that I would have to identify is it continues to raise a concern. As many of you know, I have shared with you that we have concerns about the nature and management of Rector Reservoir by the state, and this situation we have concern about because one, if they're not managing their system and investing in the repair and maintenance of the system, that's a concern because moving us on and off, and then just the assumption that the City of Napa water supply is available is a concern because that's not always an assured guarantee. So the only thing the two right now have together, Councilmember Dornbecker, is they both involve water. One is the purchase cost. So I mean, the issues that we're seeing at Rector Reservoir are going to result in potentially increased costs for the water purchase.
But they have nothing to do with the condition of the pipes or any of
And
that.
that's what we refer to as
Just
our
bad timing.
distribution system. So a little budget primer is when you're looking at the purchase, that's the, we are in communications with the Veterans Home and trying to get a better understanding of what their capital. The other thing I did not share is that, as many of you know, the Veterans Home has told us that they've done over a unplanned $600,000 emergency repair of their treatment media. They have not figured out how they're going to bill us for that yet. So the water fund account, and in this particular year, the way the water cost is distributed is they take the cost of operating Rector Reservoir, divide by the total amount of water distributed to their several customers, including the Veterans Home, us, and then they have some smaller customers. So the fact that they did not deliver water for almost 3 months does not change the overall operating cost because they take the net effect of all of the operations, including staff resource, et cetera, distributed over the smaller amount. So the number that we're seeing this year is going to be incredibly high comparatively because it's distributed over a smaller amount. So it should come down, but it creates a challenge going forward. And as you know, we have been in communications encouraging them to make the investment, the right staff, and the right preventative maintenance so that costs can ultimately be understood, leveled out. Because importantly, we need a reliable water source.
I think clearly we've heard enough from staff on this item because none of it's good news. Any member of the public have a comment or question? Seeing none, and I'm just kidding, Steve, really, sort
I
of.
fully understand and
Yeah.
don't disagree.
Any further discussion from the council? There's action being requested that we adopt this resolution for the stated reasons. Vice Mayor?
Sorry, before we get to that, do we still need the resolution? Because aren't you coming back with a different plan in 2 weeks or a month?
No, we need the resolution because we need, a lot of the plans that we might do, Vice Mayor, would have to do with the engineering information that we need to do. So this is basically approving us to modify the capital improvement plan and use it now for the actual engineering and design work.
Yeah, talking preparation of plans, specs, estimates, using a portion of the current capital improvements budget, and that's where the changes are going to need to come from.
I just have one more.
That's correct.
Yes.
Just wanted to also bring to everyone's attention that Napa County LAFCO, this is one of their big projects to do a county-wide water, wastewater baseline data to see how well governments are delivering their services, and we're making great progress on that. However, at my last update, we have not heard back from the state regarding Rector Reservoir.
That's our understanding too.
Okay, is there an action to be had? Is somebody ready to make a motion?
I move that we approve resolution number 19-3591, authorizing preparation of plans, specifications, and estimates using a portion of the current capital improvements budget for mainline and lateral repair and replacement, WA 3020, and add the Washington Park Pipeline Repair and Replacement Program project to the fiscal year 2020-2021 Capital Improvement Program, CIP.
Thank you. Is there a second for that?
Second.
Any further discussion? If not, we will go ahead and vote. Different screen,
Oh, sorry.
please. There we go. That passes. Thank you very much. Joe, are you presenting this next item?
I
Are you
am.
going to do it with a little bit more positivity, please?
I'm going to try.
Thank you. Hopper Creek, item 10B, Hopper Creek Multi-Use Pedestrian Path Project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Tonight, we have for your consideration adoption of a resolution and a negative declaration and approving the project for the Hopper Creek Multi-Use Pedestrian Path Project to approve the design plans and authorizing staff to solicit bids for the project when we have the federal approval. So just to bring you all up to speed a little bit, this particular project was started sometime 2012 or 2013 as a part of the Capital Improvement Projects Program. It was approved by council in FY 19-20 as a part of the current Capital Improvement Project Program. This is a part of the State Transportation Improvement Program, or STIP, and it is a grant funding comes from the Federal Highway Administration, which is administered for them by Caltrans. So this project will connect a north and south segment with a missing piece that runs from the Oak Circle Pocket Park with a bridge that's approximately 80 feet long, which will land in the Ad Hoc property and a path that moves along Hopper Creek for about 450 feet and then terminates at the Mission Street entry to the Rancho de Napa Mobile Home Park. So this will complete that north-south path system once it's complete. I think it's important to note that this STIP funding that FHWA and Caltrans are administering is for the funds are used for construction only in this particular project. We've been working for over 2 years on the FHWA environmental process, which included tech studies for both the National Environmental Policy Act and the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, NEPA and CEQA. So these studies include a natural environment study, historic property survey report of the Ad Hoc property, an archaeological survey of the entire stretch of the project, historical resources evaluation report, a water quality tech memo, visual impact assessment, enhancement concurrence, and a traffic and noise tech memo, just to name a few of the tech studies that we've been through. It's expected to last about 30 days once construction is started, with some minor heavy equipment, some smaller heavy equipment doing some earth moving and grading along that path, which is expected to be 8 feet wide at its widest. And then there are some areas where, to get around some trees and some structures on the ad hoc property, it's going to be just a little bit narrower, as we worked with the property owner to fit that path on the ad hoc property. I think it's also important to note that that stretch of the path is going to be paid for by the ad hoc group. That was a condition of approval when you all gave that permission for that restaurant to operate on that property, so they will be contributing to the construction along that piece of the path. But we definitely consulted with them as we were doing the design for this work, considering all the things that go on that property. Vegetation removal for this project would be limited to the existing weeds, some non-native blackberry, some miscellaneous shrubs. There's one non-protected redwood on the ad hoc property that will need to be removed, and a few small fruit trees. We definitely tried to limit the amount of tree removal, both as just a normal course of our work, but also at the request of the ad hoc property owners. The project will be situated on both public and private lands. It requires 3 permanent easements from private landowners. The one from ad hoc, which was part of the condition of approval, which we do have in hand, Rancho de Napa and Mission Street, which we also now have in hand, and West America Bank, which we are currently in negotiations on, and we are expecting that to, in one way or another, for us to be able to get approval for that, an easement on that property as well. As a CEQA lead agency, the town has prepared a negative deck with assistance from our consultant, LSA. A draft initial study was circulated to the state clearinghouse as required and was made available for public review for the 30 days from September 13th through October 14th of 2019. We received one comment letter from Fish and Wildlife, and I think it's fair to comment that comment from Fish and Wildlife is kind of a standard comment for them. So they require us to have stormwater preparation, so some netting, some berming, and some straw wattles on site in case of a spill or in case of a sudden rain. They also required us to do a little bit of biological review, so they're looking for bat habitat, a hawk, and some yellow-legged frogs. So those are all protected species, and we will have a consultant on site at the beginning of the project. I think that we're required to have a 30 days before the construction project begins. We're required to have them review the site for those species, and then again 15 days before the project begins, and on the day the project starts, just to make sure that those species aren't being harmed, and to provide the mitigation should they be in peril. What else do I have on here? And that was it really for the Fish and Wildlife and the comments that we had on the neg deck. So with that, it is our recommendation that you adopt the Town of Yountville Hopper Creek Multi-Use Pedestrian Path Project and neg deck, and approve the construction plans and authorize staff to solicit bids once our federal funding is secured. Happy to answer questions if you have them.
Okay, questions of the staff report. Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. Could you talk just a little bit, please, about the timing of the getting the easement from West America and the bidding and the actual construction and how all that fits together, please?
Sure. So because this money is tied to federal funds, it's a very rigorous system of checks and balances, really. And one of them is making sure that we have right-of-way approval before we get what they call the notice to proceed, or the E-76. So we are working with the last of the property owners right now, but we need basically 2 easements. We need one temporary easement to do the work, and then we need a permanent easement to have the path in place that allows the traffic, the public to travel across it, and also allows us the opportunity to maintain it as required. So we're hopeful that the property owners are going to keep progressing down the path, so to speak, of getting us our right-of-way. At this point, neither the property owner, who doesn't live in the area, lives in Ukiah, and the lessee, West America, both have been on the affirmative for the right-of-way. As of late, we're having some conflict with having them talk with each other and see exactly what it's going to take for them to be able to agree about what they want. So I will say that earlier on, we had long discussions with West America Bank about some screening that they wanted on the path, and so we went as far as providing some visual options for fencing. They decided they liked that wire fence that we have seen around town in a lot of locations with some vegetation on it, some plants. So we offered them several different types of plants. They selected one that they thought was more appropriate for that site. They approved of that plan, basically, and we thought we were on our way, and ever since that time, we've kind of been stalled a little bit. So they have been working with us. They had been responding to us, and we think that they will continue to do so. They're busy as everyone else is, and once we get them all together in one spot, we hope that they'll be able to we'll be able to come to an agreement. We are getting an appraisal on the property that is required by the grant. Even though they could gift it to us, an appraisal is still required for us to get the grant money. So we want to make sure that we're going through our process and meeting all of those requirements, because as I've been warned repeatedly in some trainings I've been to recently, if you don't follow the process, you risk having the money taken away. So we don't want to put that at risk after all this.
Other questions to the staff report? Councilmember Dornbecker?
It's just a comment, and I wanted to say I'm very happy to read in the Fish and Game, the
Comment.
mitigations and the comments that there would be relocation for the pond turtles and the other habitat that they might find, animals that they might find there, and that they would be tracked to see if they return to their original point. And I mean, that's very important, I believe, because of the ecosystem. So we want to protect that. So I'm glad to see that.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we're planning on doing this in the very dry season, May through October. As we all know, there's not a lot of water in Hopper Creek, so we don't expect, and I don't think Fish and Wildlife expects us to find the yellow-legged frog or the turtle. However, should that be present, we will definitely mitigate and do what they've asked.
Good.
Question about the staging area. In your report, it says likely to be staged within the existing parking area at Oak Circle Park. Likely, what are we talking about there?
Well,
capacity for the equipment and trucks, workers, or what?
No. More likely, it's going to be when we set the bridge. The bridge is expected to come in one piece. We're going to have to park a crane in the park, yard that thing off of a truck that's staged basically on Oak Circle, and set it in place on the bridge abutments. So that's the staging that we're talking about in the majority for that part of the project. And then a little bit of disruption for building the abutments on the Oak Circle side of the creek.
So there's no staging necessary of equipment for the rest of the path construction?
There won't be a lot over there, just when we build the abutment and when they set the bridge. The majority of staging for that path and that part of the equipment will be done on the, we anticipate in the bank parking lot.
And following up on Councilmember Dornbecker's question, they have found evidence of these endangered species that they're saying?
They have not found evidence of those endangered species, but that's a typical habitat where those species exist and could exist, and should they be there, then we would mitigate them.
Okay. We're being extra cautious,
That's
apparently.
Fish and, as I said, this is a typical comment from Fish and Wildlife. So we didn't get, I think I had one question about, what do you think of the Fish and Wildlife comments? And you know, did we make a comment on their comment? And our response was, this is kind of a typical comment, and we got away pretty clean with Fish and Wildlife. They usually could do, when it came to the Measure A work, we had a lot more comments and they asked us to do a lot more mitigation. So we got away pretty clean on this one.
Okay. It's a fairly small stretch of the
Yeah,
creek also.
It's not,
It's understandable.
We're staying well off the bank. I mean, that's the big difference between what we did with Measure A, where we were down in the creek proper, and we told the designers, and that's why the bridge is just a little bit longer than maybe it would have been, because we wanted to be, we were conscious that we needed to stay well off the bank to avoid all the environmental requirements that would come with being inside the creek proper.
Thanks. Any other questions of the report? Any members of the public like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we'll move right ahead to potential action. Anyone like to take some action? Vice Mayor?
I make a motion that we adopt resolution number 19-3592, adopting a negative declaration and approving the project for the Hopper Creek Multi-Use Pedestrian Path Project, PK-0003, and approving the design plans and authorizing staff to solicit bids.
Second.
Thank you. Please vote. That is unanimous as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
You are relieved for now, Joe.
Thank you.
And transitioning, next up is an informational report on the town's purchasing process. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I have quite a bit of information for you about the town's purchasing process. So there are two separate procedures that set guidelines for staff to follow when making purchases for supplies, services, and equipment and public works related projects. We will review both of them briefly, starting with supplies, services, and equipment. The town complies with state law by setting these 4 bidding thresholds, 3 of which fall within the town manager's signing authority of $45,000. Any purchase above $45,000 is presented to council for approval after a formal bidding process. Also, staff makes it practice to create a purchase order in our financial software for any expenditure over $5,000 for the purpose of budget and project expenditure tracking. Informal bidding for projects between $5,000 and $25,000 means that staff attempts to obtain quotes from at least 3 different vendors in an effort to secure a low price. Possible results would be to award a contract, reject all bids, or negotiate further with a specific vendor to revise pricing. Formal bidding for projects over $45,000 require a few extra steps, including a notice of invitation to bid and a public bid opening. After bids have been evaluated by staff, a recommendation is made to the council, and then the town council can then choose to accept, further negotiate, or reject bids. Special equipment and supplies are defined as items that are unique and needed for specific purposes that are not part of town supplies that are regularly purchased on a regular basis. And issuing an RFP or request for proposal can be useful in this situation. Sole source procurement applies when there is only one vendor the item or service can be obtained from. This type of purchase would be accompanied by a written explanation of the situation requiring sole source procurement. With cooperative purchasing, the town can utilize a contract that has already gone through the required process and has been established by another participating agency and meets these qualifying criteria. And emergency procurement would obviously be used in a extreme circumstance where there is a threat of danger. The town manager is authorized to declare an emergency. If a contract is approved in an emergency situation that is over the $45,000 threshold, the council would then confirm the emergency and approve the contract at the next available council meeting. Professional or special services for an attorney or an accounting firm can be acquired by negotiated contract rather than a bidding process, and would still need council approval if over the $45,000 threshold. And some other bidding exceptions that do not have to go through the formal process are things like departmental purchases under $5,000 and utility payments. And now we'll talk about public works contracting, which covers a variety of types of projects such as construction and renovation. It does not include these listed types of maintenances, such as routine maintenance or things that are considered minor, like landscape maintenance. So as a reminder, the town manager is authorized to approve purchases and contracts up to $45,000, and a formal bidding process is required for anything over $25,000. The bidding thresholds set by the Public Works Contract Code, which you see here, are slightly different in the fact that contracts do not require an informal bidding process unless it's between $60,000 and $200,000. And a formal bidding process is required for anything above $200,000. Negotiated contract and purchase orders can be used after obtaining a cost estimate for the project. And to use force account, the department head would apply the State Uniform Act Commission guidelines for determining a project's total cost. And these are for projects that are $60,000 and less. $60,000. For projects above $60,000 and less than $200,000, informal bidding steps include creating a list of qualified contractors, posting official notice of bid 10 days before bids are due. And for the formal bidding process, which is projects above $200,000, it does require council approval of plans and specifications, a 14-day noticing period, a public bid opening, and if successful, the council would then award the contract to the successful bidder. An emergency situation here would waive the need for adopting plans and specs and giving notice for bids in order to award the contract. And lastly, just a note about project splitting or separating one big job or contract into multiple smaller jobs or contracts, which is unlawful, as it is seen as an attempt to evade the guidelines set by the Uniform Public Construction Cost Accounting Act. So that was a lot of information. If there are any questions, either myself or Ryan would be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much.
I hope I didn't go too fast.
Well, you wanted to make it worth you having to sit through almost the entire meeting. I think we keep doing that to you. Sorry, Cindy.
It's okay. I'm learning a lot. It's very interesting.
Questions about the report?
One thing I just wanted to share, and I think it's important with the update, state law changes periodically on the public works contracting, and that number changed. And you may recall several years ago, my general purchasing authority matched, and now under state law, we go a little higher. So part of this was just a good opportunity to share with everybody the process, the details, and remind everybody of what we go through and what the structures are. And as you can see, they're very similar. We take our purchasing responsibilities very seriously. And one of the things that we really try to work on where we can, the piggybacking and using state purchasing, cooperative purchasing, joint powers authority purchasing, not only is that cost effective, but in many cases it also saves staff time and resources because we don't have to do the research. So in some cases, I just kind of wanted to share with you and the public a lot of the areas where the staff works on and how we go about doing those things. So it was a great opportunity to present to people that don't get to present too often, that work jointly to present this presentation for you.
And just one follow-up note on that, the piggybacking and the sole source purchasing, all of those exceptions that we kind of went through, Celia went through at the beginning of the presentation, those specifically apply to the supplies, services, and equipment projects. They do not apply to public works projects, which have a more limited set of exceptions. Cities and towns have a lot of discretion to decide how they purchase supplies, services, and equipment, but the same is not really true for public works contracts.
Very good. There is and I'm just thinking of this now after your comments, there is a national cooperative that is involved with electric vehicle purchasing. How does this all factor into that, or does it?
So I believe you're referring to Sourcewell, which the town is a member of. So we can go onto their website and find pre-existing contracts that have. Sourcewell is I believe, a Minnesota public corporation. So they're actually a government entity, and they essentially go through competitive bidding processes, and then those contracts are available to communities like the town of Yountville. So we just go on their website and choose already competitively bid contracts to take advantage of, essentially.
In California, the League of California Cities also has a couple cooperatives that we are partnered, California Communities, variety of things. And there is also what is referred to as state bid, so that we have the opportunity to utilize state purchasing on certain things. And, a lot of times in our public works, and I think the distinction that you're hearing is purchasing supplies, equipment, vehicles, fleet, very different than bidding on a construction project like we just talked about with a water line replacement. That's going to require a more detailed set of specifications that are specific to it. But for us, when we look at, almost all of our vehicles, for example, are purchased off a state bid, or we will see if a local business can beat state bid. So, I'm just sharing with you, there's some nuances of how we're able to work through that.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any other questions from council? Any questions or comments from the audience? Okay, that was informational. Thank you very much, Celia. Okay, council meeting reports. The big takeaway from the flood control meeting today is we approved the 2020 meeting calendar. That was very exciting. It's at the discretion of the Board of Supervisors, so whenever they change their meetings, this calendar becomes moot, and we just follow along with the supervisors' meeting calendar. So I only put that in pencil. Napa Valley Transportation Authority, Vice Mayor is going to give a report on that board.
Thank you. Well, we had a lot more excitement at the NVTA meeting. We approved the countywide bicycle plan. We also received a final draft of something called a travel behavior study report, which was really interesting reading on how traffic comes into Napa County, where the trips are, how long the trips are, who's taking the trips. Both of those are on the website at nvta.org. We also formed an ad hoc committee to provide input on the goals and objectives of the countywide transportation plan that will take us through the year 2040. We have really a good spread of the jurisdictions. We have Liz Alessio from Napa, Paul Doring from St. Helena, Leon Garcia from American Canyon, Belia Ramos from the county, and I am representing Yountville. We finalized a rider conduct policy. We also had a presentation, and it's been in the register lately, a group called FASTER, which is Freedom, Affordability, Speed, Transparency, Equity, Reliability Bay Area Initiative, and they are looking to put a 1-cent sales tax on the ballot, perhaps, to do a quote from their website, a regional rapid transit network connecting bus, train, ferry, etc. So you might want to look into that. It's fasterbayarea.org. And then we ended the meeting with a report from Molly's Angels, which was so, I don't know, it really spoke to all of us that we just don't know what this organization does. They have more than 90 volunteers, more than 580 clients, This year, to date, they have given 2,655 rides of over 32,000 miles and 3,000 hours. And if you want to know more about that, it's mollysangels.com.
And we did anticipate, talking about Celia having to sit through the entire thing, those folks waited through about almost 3 hours of our meeting until they gave that presentation, and it was very impressive. They have very specific criteria that they follow, but it does serve a significant population throughout the county, so it was very impressive. We committed to recognizing them earlier in a meeting at a future date so that more people are aware of the good work they're doing. Thank you very much. Upper Valley Waste Management Authority, any report?
Yes, we, I won't talk about the last meeting, but on last Monday, we held a special meeting to consider lifting the breach that of contract with Clover Flat, and after hearing clean reports from Fish and Game, the County Environmental Enforcement Agency, the Regional Water Quality Control Board, Napa County Engineering, and Napa County Fire, we decided to cure the breach, that they had cured the breach. The only thing that is slightly contingent is that they have a temporary fire line that's been approved by the Napa County Fire, and they have until May 2020 to put a permanent one in. Otherwise, their Clover Flat is no longer in breach of their contract. It's been
Good.
a long haul.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and follow that up with your LAFCO meeting?
Yes, I'll do LAFCO, and I also attended the Cal LAFCO conference last week. LAFCO, I think the most important thing that the board passed was agreeing to an agreement between the City of Napa and the Carneros Inn. This has been going on a long time. When Carneros Inn was first built out, it used to be an affordable mobile home park. I can't help but say that. And now it's a hotel. They said when they built it, they had plenty of water, no problem. It was approved. And now, in my opinion, not too many years later, the water is no good. So there was reluctantly, I think it's fair to say, there was an agreement with the board to allow the City of Napa to put a 2-inch pipe out to Carneros Inn to deliver water. We specifically restricted it not to be a 4-inch pipe so people along the way could tap into it. You know, there's pluses and minuses to that. Growth is going to come. That's going to be the future, and then they're going to put a new pipe in, perhaps. On the other hand, it does restrict it just to Carneros Inn. Cal LAFCO, we met last week. Our convention was in Sacramento, and all of us in Napa are part of the coastal region, and we have 16 different counties, and that's where I serve on the Cal LAFCO board. My term has expired, so I ran again with 3 others, and out of the 16 counties, I got the majority of the votes, so I am reelected to the Cal LAFCO board. We heard a lot of great presentations. Our very own Gary Bell was running one of the sessions, and next year we're meeting in Monterey.
Very good, thank you. So the next, which is now a standing committee, the Cannabis Standing Committee report, I'll start with what it's not. This is not, there's no action being taken. Let's just clear that up right now. What the Vice Mayor and I have been doing is meeting as the standing committee and also researching individually to find out information, and we felt that we had gathered enough information. And I also want to thank Councilmember Durham, who worked on this extensively while he was on the ad hoc version of this committee and provided significant information as well. We wanted to give the council an update on our research, offering up some information as well as some questions that we brought up and feel like it makes sense to offer them to you. We're not able to go into full-on dialogue And Ryan, you can clarify or stop us when we're getting near the edge, but basically, we can get questions, ask for clarification of the information we're giving, but we can't really put out where you stand on the issue or ask for any formal action. Is there any other kind of parameter that you wanted to lay out, Ryan?
No, I think you've covered it. Just kind of limit the conversation to what the Cannabis Standing Committee is working on and what they're discussing, and that seems pretty much
Okay.
it.
And I will invite public comment or questions after we make this presentation, hear any comments. So if for some reason I forget to do that, please, if anybody has something to say, we want to hear your feedback as well. So we do have a couple of different pieces of information, and Sandra is back there. Sandra and Daniel were very helpful and very timely in getting some of this information to us. We were being a little pushy about it. Because, you know, I feel like we've been talking around this topic for a very long time and really need to get to the details of it. But the maps that we're about to present and a lot of the other information, again, thanks to Sandra, Daniel, and Steve was also in on some of the meetings that we had in the standing committee. With all that said, what we want to, I'll start off and then the Vice Mayor, I think, will follow. We have some notes and we'll see how this goes. We'll be getting to a PowerPoint eventually. So just to start off, additionally, what we have been discussing as an areas of focus are what are we talking about when we're talking about cannabis retail? And we may overlap a little bit on these comments that we worked on together, but what are we talking about as a business, and what is it that we feel in favor of, and what we might be concerned about? We want to get a little bit of feedback about that. We're going to be talking about how we compare a cannabis business to any other businesses that we have in town. Certainly, the one that comes to mind is a dispensary. That's not the only type of business that might involve cannabis, and the Vice Mayor is going to go into a little bit more of those details. So we want to present the idea of, are we worried about anything specifically as it relates to a cannabis business, and if so, why? And then, assuming that we want to move forward, considering the potential of a cannabis business, we want to get that kind of direction soon. I don't think we can get that direction tonight, but we're going to be coming back, as we'll talk about later, very soon, to get some feedback through a public workshop where we will have the ability to totally interact. So I'll let the Vice Mayor continue.
Next slide, please. So there are two kind of foundational questions that the mayor alluded to. First one, what are our concerns as a community, as a council, about a cannabis business in Yountville, and why do we have those concerns? And the next one is, assuming we can work out the concerns, are we open to the possibility of a cannabis business in Yountville? And this fleshes out what the mayor said, the one on the left, cannabis business. These are kind of issues that we think going through this would help us decide the two foundational questions. Cannabis business, how do we define a cannabis business? Again, we are all mostly, I think, thinking dispensary. There might be a spa that offers cannabis products. There might be a dining establishment that could have cannabis-infused edibles. There might be lounges. There might be a pharmacy that offered some cannabis products as part of its product line. So how do we define the business? And are there, of all those definitions, are there businesses we would be open to or not open to here in Yountville? So that's kind of what we'll be looking to get to. The permitting and operation is an interesting piece. We have a regular use permit like we always have. It runs with the land, so it's an entitlement. There's a regulatory permit, which we rarely use, it does not run with the land, but it has some front-end loading that makes it sometimes a little challenging. Or we can maybe do a hybrid where we can have the best of both worlds to get what we want in the way of being able to have discretion if we decide to have any kind of cannabis business. Depending on the kind of business that it might be, do we treat it like a similar business? Is a cannabis lounge like a cigar bar or a tasting room? Is a spa without cannabis products the same as a spa with cannabis products? We have some familiar models, maybe, or maybe we want to start from scratch. Again, an open issue. The application process and the selection criteria, these have, gosh, the jurisdictions we've looked at, they are every which way from Sunday of how they do this. What's in the application? What is the selection process? Again, we would be looking to talk about and flesh out how we can have discretion over the desirability and fit of a particular cannabis business if we get past the first hurdles of what are we concerned about and do we want the business? And the third question, which the mayor will take, the third really, I think, big issue, especially for us, is the location, possible locations.
And so we do have, so here it is in written form. Principally what we were talking about, we have identified land use zoning areas that we feel make sense to consider and some that we aren't going to recommend be considered. This gives a little, very general, west of Washington is a likely area that makes sense. In some cases, and we didn't entirely agree on the east side of Washington, but in some cases, in some zone areas, there is the possibility of a business on the east side. Reminding folks that on the other side of Highway 29, in particular, the Napa Valley Wine Train Depot is a public facility zoned area. Actually, what I had forgotten is the entire Veterans Home is a public facility zoned area. And then different locations for different business types. So I think it makes the most sense to look at the mapping so we can talk through it. But as we're doing that, I wanted to set up a few other things to think about. Some of this conversation absolutely happened in the general plan review, and we had different meetings where we heard different perspectives. There are some folks that live in town, some folks that work in town that were very supportive of cannabis retail, in particular dispensary, and there were others that were very concerned about bringing a dispensary or even any other cannabis products into town, and there were myriad reasons given by both sides. So we've had a lot of public engagement on this already, and we feel like that's part of what the basis is for our consideration and some of the conflict areas. There's something that we didn't put in the language that came up is, and we'll get to it eventually, is the sales tax implications of a business. We have heard, and I'm going to rely on Ryan to a degree here, about the difference between medical cannabis and recreational cannabis and how not only are those treated differently, but they are taxed differently, and matter of fact, medical restricts taxing, which is different than recreational. We will eventually get to on-site consumption. Is it a good or a bad idea? Do we look at it, as the Vice Mayor said, do we look at this exactly like a tasting room? This is a business that provides a product that you may consume on site, you may not consume on site, you may take it home with you. Should we treat it exactly the same way, or should we treat it differently? So looking at the maps, if we have that slide with the first map, I'm sure you could all see that very clearly in great detail. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky to be able to see it. This is the preview. This is the entire town of Yountville, and all the colored areas that you can't see very well are the different zoning areas. And what we have done is we put three different areas of potential conflict. We will circle those at the next slide. Generally speaking, conflict areas are around places of worship, youth-oriented activities like a school, and then an area like you'll see, as I described the slide, where there's a lot of family or youth activity that is welcomed in an area. And looking at the very top of this slide, and I'll recognize this is a 300-foot buffer. So the state in Proposition 64 has set some general state parameters. There are many of those parameters that are still left up to the local governmental decision makers. That would be us. So we have the discretion to change the distances of potential conflict if we choose them to be appropriate. And with a town as small as ours, we feel like it probably is appropriate if we get to, yes, we want to have a business or businesses, how far away from certain areas do we feel like they should be? Using this 300-foot example, we have a 350 and a 400-foot example next, but if you look in the upper area where you see a white number 3, that black line shows a conflict area that is 300 feet around Yountville Community Park. Because it is very youth-centric, we've put most of our playground equipment there. Basically from tip to tip of that property, we're recognizing that that is probably a zone that we would not welcome any cannabis business within that zone. If you look toward the middle, number 2, that is around Yountville Community Church. There is an overlap in area, and actually just to recognize, the Catholic Church at the very south of the map is also a zone 2, just for your designation. In the middle again, number 1 is the Yountville Elementary School campus, and we recognize that that conflict still technically exists. It may not be a conflict as of June of 2020, but that remains to be seen. Yeah, Councilmember Durham.
I apologize. One is the school or the community center?
One is the school. We do not designate the community center as a conflict area because it is not principally a youth-oriented facility. We also did not put the Adventist Church on here, which is a little bit further south than, or east actually, of the school, because we feel like we do not recommend at all that any consideration be put into things that far east into our residential neighborhoods. So that was basically off the table for us, and we wouldn't recommend it, and didn't think anybody else was trying to push for that either. So that's the visual up there. I just want to read through some of the reasoning between the different buffer zones. There are areas like in the north end near the conflict 3 area of Yountville Community Park that we were, thank you, I can actually see this one. We are conscious of the fact that it touches part of Washington Square and what that might mean for the potential for a business to be in Washington Square. We have the discretion to allow within these buffer zones if we choose, but we're using these, as a fundamental guide of where we think we should avoid, or if we wanted to modify, this would be an example of where we could modify. If there was a spot in Washington Square and we wanted to adjust that property to be included in a potential business area, then we could make that choice. It also goes down on the east side of Washington, stopping just short of Ponchas. I think it does include Chichio and the residents on the corner, but it does not include Ponchas, for example. We did not draw these maps to purely fit property lines, but it so happens that this 300-foot buffer does basically line up on those property lines. If you go down into the middle of town, again, there are conflicts, part of it being in neighborhoods, part of it being near these conflict areas. So you could hopefully see them for yourself about where there are buffer zones that we are going to try to respect, basically. The colorized areas are done so to get a sense of where we believe the most viable spots are, and we believe those are in 3 of the commercial zoning areas. That would be The the residential scale commercial, why am I blanking on the three names? Primary commercial, I should look at the legend actually. Residential scale commercial, primary commercial, and Old Town commercial, we believe are all three viable zoning areas. It does not mean that every property within those zones we recommend as being viable, but to try to narrow the focus. We did not support, after discussion with town staff, the retained commercial because there are a lot of unique limitations in that retained commercial zoning area, and we felt like what it was including, basically the French Laundry restaurant and adjacent residential and commercial businesses, was not really a viable area anyway, so we eliminated for consideration the retained commercial. So primary commercial, Old Town commercial, and residential scale commercial. That basically limits consideration to the Washington Street corridor. Most of it being on the west side, but with some consideration of properties on the east side of Washington. If you can see the, I'll call it purple, some of you might call it eggplant, lavender, whatever, on the east side, just to the lower left of the number 1, you'll see that roughly Edward James Courtyard is what we're talking about there. So there could be potential in some of that, which is already a business section of town. Go further to the south, and we get into areas that we would consider on the east side, or again, this is where we had a little bit of a disagreement on whether we go on the east side or not. Basically, south of the community center would be Hill Family, Bistro Gentil, the bike shop, the Ranch Market area, West America Bank, as you go further south. So again, these are already businesses that exist, but the potential, if they changed over time, we're identifying these zones and these particular properties as potentially viable. I've already mentioned on the other side of the highway, in the public facility zone, the Wine Train Depot area, that's the only place that's designated public facility that we would be open to recommend. Obviously, the public facility as it stands as a school, we would not recommend, and we have no jurisdiction at the Veterans Home, so we didn't consider that either. The extension of that blue above the Wine Train Depot just follows along the train tracks, so that's not viable either. Let's see. As I said, we have the jurisdiction to change or either larger or smaller buffer zones. Again, this shows 300 feet. The others are very similar, 350 feet, and then 400 feet. You can see how the circles just expand to include additional areas for consideration of potential conflict areas. This is just to really introduce the idea, to make it real for us, because, thank you, because what's written in the state law and the guidelines that we're given, we wanted to present in real time and space for Yountville. I think I'll hand it back over to the Vice Mayor.
Thank you. All this to say, yes, we are just trying to put some circles on maps. As you can see, we're focused on the commercial properties, the French Laundry, which is a retained commercial, although we have not talked about it. It's up to the council ultimately where we all want to have these businesses. But even the French Laundry property, we could rezone it. Not saying we should, not saying we would, but these are just places that it might happen, all subject to a lot of additional discussion. Which brings me to our next steps. Next slide. We're going to continue to work. I have already been in contact with our town attorney about what might be coming down to us from the state level starting on January 1st of 2020, because I think that will inform some of what we want to do. We're continuing to reach out to other jurisdictions and reading a lot of ordinances and applications and that kind of stuff. So what we'd like to do is get whatever feedback we can tonight and questions that council or the public might have, and then bring this back to the council for an in-depth discussion at one of our December meetings.
And in that further discussion, we would have that be a much more interactive. This is basically informational tonight. We'd have very interactive additional dialogue with the public, even though we're going to invite a little bit of that tonight. This is really just meant to introduce some of the data that we've collected. There are many cities. City of Napa has one active dispensary. There are 3 or 4 other permits that are in various stages of the process. We have other neighbors. Cotati is one city that we've gone to with 10 years, I think, at least, that they've had cannabis businesses there. West Hollywood is another. None of these we would take and just cut and paste into Yountville. That's not what we're looking at all, but we're not also going to start from a blank sheet of paper and try to craft new ordinance language when some good research and learnings have happened already in these other jurisdictions. So we're definitely tapping into the city of Napa and how they've gone through their process because they're active with that business. Any concerns they've had with with the existing business, or how they've navigated some of the, whether it's hours of operation, whether it's security, locations. I know the city of Napa principally is located in industrial areas. We don't have any industrial areas, so we wouldn't take that section of their ordinance and apply it. So continuing to learn, we are both reaching out to existing cannabis business owners. I've had some people reach out to me saying, hey, what's going on in Yountville? We'd like to come and open our business there. And we say, we don't have plans yet, which is part of what's motivating us to get there. But we have other businesses. I know South Lake Tahoe is a very good example that we're reaching out to, where there's a council member that's for many years had 2 dispensaries in South Lake Tahoe, and he knows both sides of it, the ordinance writing and the business operations side. And there are other resources, the State Cannabis Association. We have friends and colleagues that are very familiar with that, so we're going to tap into them, maybe even inviting some of them to this workshop, as well as having local law enforcement presenting what they have been learning that might be helpful in our decision making.
And this is where I will give a slight admonition. That's a great place to wrap up, because that's really your report, and the next steps will be having that informational workshop. You'll have more detailed presentations, but as it is a council report item, it is really not one that we get into a whole lot of interchange.
Can we have the council ask questions and comments about what direction they'd like us to go for additional research? Not really. Is that right, Ryan? Go ahead. You could tell us all.
Given that the Cannabis Standing Committee's report is on the agenda, there can be some limited discussion between council about what was on the report, clarifications, questions about what the committee is doing at the moment, and that's kind of where the limitation lies.
So can I suggest this? Only 2 areas of question or comment. One would be to actually clarify facts that were just presented, or recommendations about facts we gather going forward.
I think if you went there and if there are questions that they simply would like answered, and I think it's important to also recognize that what you're really recommending is that at a future date, we're going to be having a full broader scale workshop. So I don't want anybody to think, whether they're on the council or the public, that there isn't going to be a more appropriate opportunity where things will be presented in a different format. This has just been put on the request. We have several ad hoc and standing committees, and the council is asked to be briefed on what are they all up to. So it is a fine line, as you're hearing from both of us.
Yeah, so as long
as
we will have that limitation, I believe the council understands what you can and can't ask or say. And then I still would like to invite the same from our audience. If anybody has specific questions they would like us to research so we could bring back information when we meet again in December. That's all we're talking about. We're not asking you to tell us whether you love it or hate it or anything like that. We're going to save that for December during the holiday season. So if there are very specific, you've all been warned. So do you dare, Councilmember Dornbecker?
Well, it's just a clarification.
No, you can't ask that.
And it is that I noticed in the three sections that you mentioned that you are under consideration, that you didn't mention the west side of Washington Street, for example, where V Marketplace and those places are.
We did. We designated basically all of the west side of Washington Street because it's in that primary commercial area as being under consideration.
That was my only question.
So all what was in that kind of reddish, the easiest way to look at it is primary commercial, Old Town commercial, and residential scale commercial, but recognizing that not every property within that we have been analyzing as viable.
All right, I do have one more question then. And it is, will the map that you have be available online so that we can look at it? Because I couldn't see it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
That is, oh, good.
Yeah, I think we can definitely put that on the website, can't we? Yeah. And then you can enlarge it on your laptop or whatever at home. Absolutely. Yeah.
We can make sure that the information is available, so you'll need to make sure that you share your PowerPoint with us.
Yeah. This is just informational at this point. Yeah. Were there questions, any other questions from council? So again, you're under the same tight guidelines here about questions or comment. Any, or are we going to just see you all come back here in December? Okay, we'll see you in December. Oh, Whitney, yes. Almost, so close.
Whitney Diver McAvoy, Yountville Chamber of Commerce. I would just ask at the workshop in December that we have some more information about the difference between a medical dispensary and a regular dispensary and the sales tax implications for the town with that. Because from my understanding, they are different, and we didn't really go into that tonight. That's okay, but I think it would be beneficial to talk about that at the workshop. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. And I think we might be able to get a little bit more of that, Ryan. Is that true? Or is there basically medical you can't tax?
I think we'd probably save that for the December meeting so we can get further into it at that point.
Okay. So if you want to follow Ryan out to his car later and talk to him, you may. I believe that's all for comments in our narrowly defined comment period. So thank you. This is really just, as Steve said, to update everybody. So let's move on to the Parking Ad Hoc Committee. Is there any report?
Yeah, I'll give the report for that. I think we met sometime in September. I can't remember the exact date. It was a very informal, I would kind of describe it as a meet and greet with the chamber members, the ad hoc, and staff. We really just did kind of a round table about, what's everybody's issues. We heard about, some people parking in people's parking lots, all day long and going camping and, gone for the day. And just, everybody just shared something different just so we could get just a general flavor of where everybody thought the issues were. That was it.
Okay. Thank you. Emergency Preparedness Ad Hoc Committee.
That would be me. And on October 29th, when we had planned to have our second annual townwide workshop, as you remember, we were all just suffering through the PG, although it wasn't by design, it was actually an event that happened, and so it shut off our power too. So we decided, although the power came back on almost just in time, we decided that we would put it off, and so it will take place. It will be on Monday, November the 18th at the same time from 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. And I'm glad we're having this discussion because I wanted to talk about how during that time, and even if it's just the power shut off for several days, I think you got a taste of how much we do need to have a Yountville neighbor network. And so the whole point of this workshop really will be to prepare you to get together. We're a very friendly town. We have small neighborhoods, but we don't all know our neighbors. But in the case of a traumatic emergency, like a major earthquake in the Bay Area, or the fires crossing Silverado Trail, for example, it would be very, very helpful to have our networks in place. And the networks would include both communications, and we are looking at adding a ham radio element. There are several members of our community who are ham radio operators, and we will have a table at this upcoming workshop with ham radios. And funny thing, ham radio technology has improved so much that you can have a little ham radio that's the size of a walkie-talkie and listen in, as my husband and I did during the power shutoff. And I'll tell you something that really impressed us was in listening to that, we could hear the CERT-trained people in Napa doing wellness checks. And then they would check in and say, visited this house and all's well, or this house I got no answer, or whatever. But they had their network in place. So the second aspect of the network will be also tying together the people in town who have CERT training. And I know two of them are up here right now on this dais, and my husband and Carrie Hayes, several of us, Sandy Fagan, are CERT trained. So, but in your own neighborhoods, we really, really want to impress upon you the importance of having that in place. So at this townwide workshop, we will have 8 to 10 tables with different, first responders. There'll be a CERT, not a CERT table, but there will be what to put in your go bag and a demonstration of the go bag. My husband will be there with his radios. And we will have a county table and a bunch of information around the room for you to accumulate. And then we're going to cap it off by playing, we're going to play Prepperty, which is Preparedness Jeopardy. And so we'll see if you can have picked up some of the hints around the room for the answers. And there will be prizes, and there will be wine. I want to thank Whitney Diver McAvoy and the Chamber for providing some wine for us to have at that event. I was going to have Halloween candy there too, but Halloween's over. So it'll just be popcorn. But it's going to be, I believe that you can have fun and do productive things. And that night, I'm going to introduce the concept of our annual derby. It's a preparedness ready derby. And it will be a competition among the neighborhoods once a year where you will be given a bingo card with all of these little things to how many people are signed up, how many go bags. And once a year, some judges to be determined will come around and judge who's got the most prepared neighborhood. And you could win possession of the trophy for the year and a barbecue for your network. So I want you to really, open your mind about how we could make this fun and productive and help each other out a lot. So I hope you'll come. It's Monday, November 18th, 5:30 to 7:30. And, with Carrie involved, it's got to be fun.
Any additional? She covered it all?
She covered it all, and Marita, Councilmember Dornbecker brought science into this by saying that you have to hear something 400 times to learn it, unless you have fun doing it, and then you learn it in only 10 to 20 times. So kudos to that.
I did read that. Scientists have shown that. So in order to create a new synapse in your brain, You have to hear something 400 times unless you do it with play. So let's play.
And with wine, only 3 times.
Or you may have to have it repeated several times.
Thank you very much for that. In the spirit of the lost power and the concerns about the wildfires, I want to recognize in particular, I mean, our entire town staff was amazing, but 2 people in this room stood out above all, Samantha and Joe, all weekend long from, I thought I was getting out early on the weekend morning to drive around town and see the conditions. Joe was already out there. Samantha was already setting up the community hall each day, on calls throughout the day with county resources, state resources, nonstop, leaving families at home without power, and in some cases with no way to really have viable food, but recognizing specifically Samantha and Joe all day throughout our outages, commending both of you. Steve was off in Michigan having his own weather-related drama with his family where torrential rains knocked their power out, so he got a little taste of it remotely. But I know our Public Works team were all out checking for wind damage. So thank you both specifically for all you did, keeping our Veterans Home Administration updated, all of us as updated as we could be. You were exactly the aspiration that we want from not just our staff, but our family members in Yountville. So thank you very much for that dedication. Appreciate it. So moving on to other, I've got a long list of things here. Anybody have specific reports? Yes, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. In keeping with our theme tonight of recognizing residents and staff family members, November 10th, this Sunday at the Lincoln Theater, there will be a film at 3 o'clock and a conversation with the filmmaker at 4:30. Her name is Teresa Serrao. The film is Alive Again. It is in honor of Veterans Day. She will also be performing a song she wrote to honor veterans called Through a Soldier's Eyes. Admission is free, but you do need to make a reservation. And one reason I really call this out is because one of our residents, Dolly Grupalo, was instrumental in bringing this. She came to my office hours, it's been over a year ago, and asked me, had I ever heard of this artist? I said no. I made a few calls, I got no traction. She made some other calls that I know about out to the community. She has really brought this project to us as a gift to our veterans and to our community. And it is also made possible with support through community donations and the Lincoln Theater Veterans Performing Arts Fund. So hope to see you all there for some or all of that on Sunday the 10th. Thank you.
And also just a reminder, we do have Veterans Day coming up here next week. That will be previewed by the Celebrity Chefs Luncheon. The annual luncheon is tomorrow. I have a feeling many of us in this room will be volunteering. Don't forget your ball caps unless you want to wear the hairnet, Jeff. Reporting, I believe, is at 10 o'clock. There are 2 lunch services. It's really one of the best days of the year to be able to interact with our resident veterans, having some of our top chefs come. And I believe Chef Bob Hurley, who was, along with Cindy Saucerman, the minds behind this idea 11 plus years ago. Chef Hurley is going to be there as well. I don't think he's having to work quite as hard as he did for the first 10, but he will be there. Also, a lot of activity related to the League of California Cities. We did have our annual conference down in Long Beach, and it culminated, well, the night before, on October 17th, Councilmember Dornbecker was sworn in as the new president of the North Bay Division of the League of California Cities. Congratulations. Steve Rogers is now the first vice president of the city manager's department and will be the president of that department next year. Unless something happens like what happened to me, which is the current person resigned and you speed up that process. But I was sworn in as the president of the League of California Cities on October 18th, and I certainly was thrown right into it the following week with various activities. I was on a CNN International News interview by Skype early Sunday morning. They didn't tell me anything about these 7:30 Sunday morning interviews when I took the job, but that was all about the wildfires and the power shutoffs and some of the national and international perspectives on that. Also, I was up in Sacramento yesterday for a homelessness workshop that was co-hosted by the League of Cities and the California State Association of Counties, CSAC, and there were about 300 folks, elected officials, city staff, and many members of the of organizations that are supporting homelessness efforts throughout the state. There were about 300 attendees, and we had a special guest appearance by about 15 visitors who wanted to share their unique perspective on what they considered the failures of cities to establish better homeless conditions. Some would call them protesters. I would call them passionate advocates for their position. But it was a way to really highlight the emotion and the passion and the seriousness of the homelessness issue. We are very fortunate in Napa County. We don't have a significant population. We have a population for sure. It is a crisis for many, mostly urban cities, but not just urban cities. And so throughout the state and throughout the country, that is a primary area of focus. Two other things that are benefits of being league president. I get to host the league leaders. We all do as members of the Yountville contingent. There is a league leaders strategic goal setting and board meeting December 4th through the 6th at the Meritage Hotel in Napa, where there will be a couple hundred city officials from around the state coming here to set the league's strategic goals for next year. And then next February, we will be hosting here in Yountville all of the board of directors at a board meeting being held at Hotel Yountville in February. Again, because the February board meeting is held in the home jurisdiction of the president. So bringing some business into town as well as some great learning opportunities. And I think all of us that have been involved with the league see the value in that. That makes us better local electeds, and we work well with our colleagues around the state. So a lot of activity with the league, much more to come as this year moves forward. Councilmember Dornbecker.
Can I just add that on December the 11th, the following week, we'll have the North Bay Division strategic planning retreat here in Yountville also. So bringing more business to Yountville. That's good.
So clearly Yountville is taking over the 478 member League of California Cities in fine fashion.
We're tiny but mighty.
With wine in hand. We don't have any closed session items tonight, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to our next regular meeting of Tuesday, November 19th. By the way, I will be missing that meeting. My obligations with the National League of Cities will take me to San Antonio that week, so the Vice Mayor will be running that meeting on the 19th, but if we could have a motion to adjourn to that meeting.
So moved.
Second. Let's get this last
Second.
vote in there. Last electronic vote. Please vote. That's unanimous as well. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.